Welcome back, everyone, with Your One podcast. We have Micah McNiel, Felipe Segura, and Zachary Crilley with us today for another great episode. We're on episode 12 now, moving right along in the new year, 2 weeks in. So this episode, I know we did some predictions at the end of the, I think, second to last episode, but we wanted to get into some more specifics with our predictions for 2024. So we wanted to do some company predictions, some best and worst company predictions for the year. Zach, do you have one?
Sure. Happy to kick off this first iteration of our Your One podcast predictions. My biggest winner prediction for companies in 2024 are bootstrapped startups. Why do I say this? I was recently on Product Hunt, and usually I just look at tinker around and see what the top products of the day that are released are. But this time I got curious and went back to 2020 and was looking at the top products from each month. And each one of them, for the most part, was backed by one of the VC big shot firms. And then I compared that to the top products of the past couple months, and the vast majority of those are bootstrapped products. So I think that not only is this a sign that there's a improved productive capacity that's accessible to a segment of the marketplace that was previously you had to raise a bunch of money to hire a bunch of engineers to get this work done. Now that threshold is lowered. In addition to that benefit, I think that these companies are in a prime position because they have the freedom from the constraints that the VC-backed companies have, and that they don't have to raise another round, or they don't have these partners in their ears pushing them in one direction or the other. And frankly, I think that it doesn't make sense to me how these companies won't cannibalize the existing players in the marketplace, that have traditionally been able to dominate because of the engineering power that's now become pretty much unanimous to anybody that wants to make a new product.
Yeah, honestly, I think that a lot of what is behind direct to consumer products right now is money, and like it's this big shiny thing where everybody wants to raise a round. But honestly, if you can do that if you can be successful without raising a round, that just means that you have a good product, really. And good products really market themselves. And all of these companies are dumping ad dollars into these new like Facebook ads or whatever it may be. But those that have loyal followings and are bootstrapped are going to be the long-term winners. So I definitely agree there. But honestly, that kind of goes with my pick of this company called Viome, which is a personalized nutrition company, and it takes basically blood and like urine samples of people, of their consumers, and designs supplements based on all of their information and data. And I think if they can couple that with a loyal fan base and influencer marketing and things like that, that's going to be a huge shift, because I think there's just so much BS in supplements that personalization is going to be the big winner.
That sounds dope, but it sounds very intrusive. I gotta send a piss sample to get my vitamins.
People are becoming more accepting of that, though. I think like people
Yeah.
want to know what their health is all about and see what's going on inside.
Yeah,
Gavin,
no,
have
no.
you have you peed in a cup, Gavin, incentive.
Not for that. But would you guys do that? Like, would you guys send a sample to see what's going on with your body?
I
So
definitely would. I definitely would. There's so much, dude. There's so much just bad food out there. Like, just like I talk to my like European friends or friends from other places, and just like the food, it's like literal poison that we put into our bodies. So if I could find the most efficient, effective way of like putting good stuff in my body, then why the hell not? If I have to pee in a cup, I have to pee in a cup. It just sounds very intrusive and sort of
Yeah.
awkward.
I just think that there's going to be a huge shakeup in the food industry and that there's already signs of that. But have you guys seen what Elon's brother has been doing? He's like influencing people to basically create their own food supply, like in their backyard. And he's doing that at scale somehow. I think he's growing or convincing people to grow their own food in these like little trailer trucks.
Mm.
And then that's their own food supply for all of time if they wanted it to be.
Yeah, maybe and his brother can come up with a way that I can do that in my shoebox of an apartment in New York. But that would actually be pretty cool.
yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the biggest headwind, and I did 23andMe once, which like doesn't really tell you much. It gives you like an estimate of where you descend from, but it's uncertain. Like you can have the same. Another one of my brothers did it, and like it showed different parts of Europe that we were from. So maybe we're adopted and we don't know, or something like that. I don't know, but I mean, I think that's definitely an interesting space. It's definitely growing. It's definitely just going to be a race of who can make the cheapest solution possible.
Mm,
Because I know
mhm.
a lot of these doctors that are kind of out of network, I'm pretty sure, where they do the blood test and then they see like what supplement matches your body type or your immune system or what are you deficient in is a huge business and they're expensive. They're like $1,000, $2,000 to do all these
Right.
tests, meet with the doctor. So if they can get cheaper than that, it's a huge industry. Yeah,
Mm.
I like that.
Yeah. And Felipe, do you have a best company?
Yes. So best company, I think in 2024 is sector wise, I think is going to be non-renewable energies. So I definitely think oil, I mean, it stayed around 90 to $100 a barrel of crude, I think. It stayed this year, and I don't think it's going to go down. I think the war with Russia and Ukraine is still going to be there. I think with whatever's happening with the Houthis blocking shipping, that's another issue around oil. And then I think renewables right now, even if they build more, it's not going to lower the price of energy because the grid system can't hold all those renewables as it is currently. And I don't have confidence in Congress to build new nuclear reactors because I don't think that they can figure those things out. That is just a realist take. That's my take. And I think, especially in Europe, that doesn't have energy, so they're completely reliant on imports. It's going to be super expensive. And when you're talking about major industrial players like Germany that need cheap energy, I think energy is going to be a huge player. And I think even with when we're talking about electric cars, lithium, if you're going to build more electric cars, you need more lithium. So yeah, that's my take.
That's gonna be such a big going forward, just in like sort of foreign relations, what happens with Ukraine, Russia. You mentioned it in the Red Sea with the Yemenis and the Houthis and where that goes. Those are so many angles there and how that relates to energy. That's going to be super interesting. How that all of these different conflicts that we have, how that also will interplay into the energy sector. I sort of for my pick. And I tried to share this 2 weeks ago when we were giving sort of that first episode of the new year, and I couldn't share my screen, but I can share my screen now, and I have sort of a egalitarian sort of take. So I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. Um, so this company is called Post. And essentially it sort of lays it out clearly what sort of they think about. And to me, this is going to be the next big social media company. And like it says, real people, real news, civil conversations. What they're trying to do is basically localize news, right? So instead of having this big grand centralized sort of venue for talking about things, like, we have vehicles such as Twitter. Now this wants to localize the news, so local people talking about things going on locally, and then also having those civil conversations. This is the how it looks. This is the founder, Noam Barden. He was previously the CEO at Waze. So he sort of jumped from, you know, showing you where, how to get to your local restaurant or something like that, to making this company. And I'm super bullish on this idea, as it relates to just so many things. We talked about institutional trust on one of our earlier episodes. And sort of our, I guess, loss of trust with whether it be CNN or NBC or Fox or any of, the whole nine. So I'm very optimistic in what this company and what Noam and team are trying to build. I actually sent him a DM on Instagram one time because I wanted to work for the company. I thought what they were trying to do is really cool. To no avail. He didn't respond, but it's cool. I'll still sign up. But that's my pick. What do you guys sort of think about that? We had, previous conversations about institutional trust and stuff like that. If we can localize conversation and get rid of the bots and stuff like that, and sort of build, you get like organic conversations. What do you guys sort of think about that?
So
I'm laughing at
I,
that guy's bio. Love ice cream, but quit sugar. Sad face.
He's
I love
cheeky.
the idea of that,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Like, I feel like social media is all about the red meat. Like, people just can't resist to get in the conversation.
Hmm.
I almost think that Twitter, and this could be a hot take, or sorry, X is going to have a big year just because it's an election cycle
Hmm.
and people are just going to go start tweeting crazy stuff. People want to reply. I think the same with Instagram, TikTok. I think just that red meat of people wanting to talk about things that do not influence them one bit is just so addicting. But I hope that this stock can
Hmm.
do well. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
definitely like, if it does well, it'd be a new niche that I don't think exists. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think just responding to your that point, if this, because with Twitter and like sort of what we get is those algos that like sort of confirm what we already believe, right? Those preconceived notions. So it's just the feedback loop is just things that we already think. So it's just we get people that are saying what we already agree with. If this could do it in an opposite where you're seeing the other perspective, but you also have a medium to actually talk about it, then that's doing something. To your point, though, that's going to be extremely difficult. And I think that's one of the barriers they have to jump over.
Yeah, I think that it's the conversation of, are the algorithms shaping the way that we think, or is it that that's what people really want, is information that confirms their belief?
Mhm.
Um,
It's
I
probably
don't
the
know what
latter.
the answer is. Yeah, but
Yeah.
let's assume it's the latter just for the sake of the conversation. Then to your point, the angle of this new platform would be, how do we make it engaging enough that it's almost like rage bait, where like we show you stuff that we know that you're not going to like, but we pull you in instead of like turning you off. We pull you in and get you to have a conversation about it.
Mhm.
Um, then it's like, how do you get people to do that in a civilized way? That's a whole nother conversation. But maybe there is a market gap there that this company can fill.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And going back to our previous podcast about like the mission statements of companies and their execution on them, it would be very interesting to see if they can execute on that mission, because that's definitely a difficult task to do. But let's move along here with political leaders. Very
Wait, we have to do the leaders for the losers.
the losers.
Losers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you want to go ahead? Losers for
Sure.
companies.
I've said Company loser for 2024, Meta. Their stock is up 177% from last year. I think that they launched a couple, frankly, bad products. I saw reviews for their sunglasses, and people said a lot of the features that were kind of used to sell it are still in private beta. So unless they can get those to the public pretty soon, I think that that will end up being a flop. Threads, I don't know what the numbers are behind Threads, but I haven't personally used it, or I don't know anybody that uses it. And I think that there's an overall trend of more intentionality with social media usage that's going to cut back their average screen time that people spend on a weekly basis on their platform. And that combined with the alternative that X is now, formerly Twitter, being at least it's perceived as being a haven for freedom of speech. I think that, to Felipe's point, this being an election year, that's going to be the town square for people to express their opinions, and the time that people would have spent expressing those opinions on Facebook are now going to translate over to Twitter, X.
Yeah, I mean, on that, I think that those, like the glasses or whatever, the goggles that they just launched, I do see a future where that actually has a place, but this year I don't know. And then don't you think that people are going to put their information on both platforms, like X and Instagram or Facebook or whatever? Like, I think there's a space for both, really.
I personally think that there's going to be, I mean, the scale at which these companies operate is just absolutely enormous, right? I think that the trend will be that there will be a shift of sorts from conversations that would have happened on Facebook or Instagram to these conversations taking place on X. Do I think that, I mean, again, these are all short-term predictions, right? I was thinking about it within the context of this year. Meta's still going to be a strong company at the end of this year, for sure. I just don't think that their stock price is going to be where it is today. And maybe I'm wrong.
I'll follow into that. I think if you put me and Zach's predictions together, the Magnificent Seven wouldn't be doing too well. My worst is probably gonna be Apple. I think their new iPhone's not that great comparatively to the older one, and I think their stock price is at a record high right now. And I think people don't need to buy a new iPhone always. Like, you can live without a new iPhone. So I think definitely Apple, I would say, for me, would be the worst pick. And then second to that, I think a lot of the newer AI companies, I think the market has priced in AI pretty well in terms of its potential. So it could only underperform, or it could massively overperform, and then we don't even know. But I think a lot of these different GPT, ML language models are getting pretty close to each other. So I think that none of them are going to really take off. But obviously, I think the industry around AI, the side roads off of the highway that is created by ChatGPT and Bard, are going to do really well. I just don't know if those companies themselves will keep taking off in value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Go ahead.
mine, I kind of said those companies that are adjacent to AI that kind of use it to become more efficient will be more profitable, but like the LLMs that we're used to, like ChatGPT and Bard, like it's going to be harder to get an edge, I feel. But my big pick was that there's going to be many Allbirds in 2024. So in the e-commerce D2C space, I think there's going to be a lot of companies that have overextended themselves in ad dollars and customer acquisition and just paying to get customers. And we're going to see a lot of kind of retraction in the people that actually have a loyal base and those that don't. And like Allbirds did, they had to shut down stores, lay off employees, things like that. And I think there's just a lot less employees that can have the same impact with AI and those companies that use it best.
Yeah, I want to get to political winners, but or political winners and losers. I feel like that's definitely the topic. But my quick one is Disney. I can't even tell you the last good Marvel movie. Disney brought Bob Iger back, who is like literally one of the best executives ever. That's kind of flopped a little bit. They have sort of the litigation going on in Florida. Rob DeSantis, they're not really too fond of each other. So I think Disney, unless there's a correction, hopefully Bob Iger could be a part of it. Maybe he needs to be let go. I don't know what they want to do, but that is mine. That is my business loser of 2024. But very excited to get to what we think about this. This is a huge year in election, so I'd love to get with you guys. Who are you guys as winners and potential losers of 2024? I can start with mine.
Go. You seem
Let's hear it. You're so
Yeah,
excited.
yeah, I'm very excited about this one. Prediction. I predict that Donald Trump actually recently on Truth Social came out, and I think he was in an interview with someone, but he was like, I have my VP in mind. My person for who that VP is going to be Vivek Ramaswamy, who I wish was going to be our president, but I believe that Vivek actually came out and said it, and I actually agreed too. DeSantis is eventually going to drop out, and he's going to join Haley as her VP on that ticket. So you're going to have on the red side, you're going to have Trump, Vivek, president to vice president, and then you're going to have Haley and DeSantis as a ticket, and that's going to be that's my prediction for what happens, at least on the right side of things. On the left, as a former Democrat, I don't even know what to say about the left right now. So I'm just not gonna even I'm not gonna even talk about that side of things. But that is my prediction for 2024.
That is a hot take.
Yeah, very contrarian. Very contrarian.
Honestly, I had a similar response. I said Ramaswamy or RFK, just somebody who is outspoken and takes on like modern media and uses it to their advantage. But I agree. What do you guys
What do
think?
you agree with? As the winner or like a prediction?
More just like what kind of ideas will be popular and who is saying those ideas. And I think
Mm,
that is Ramaswamy and RFK who are kind of spearheading that like truth and like less woke ideas.
mm. There's a
Yeah,
couple nuggets in that.
I agree with you, Gavin, 100%. And as somebody who has been talking about like the prospect of a viable third party rising in America, and usually people laugh at the proposition of that because the two-party system is so entrenched. It's so endearing to me to see the statistics of 60+% of Americans
Yeah.
now willing to support a third party candidate. And I would venture to think that the numbers are even higher among young voters.
Mm.
And that kind of leads, I also chose Vivek as the political winner of the year. So if nothing else, the fact that he's top of mind in our world says something. I think that he has definitely had the most meteoric rise throughout this campaign. RFK Jr. you could argue as well, but he has the name and the family lineage who could even say Vivek Ramaswamy, you know, a year and a half ago? Nobody knew who he was. He had written a couple books actually that were fairly notable in the kind of young right circles. But even if so long as Trump is in the race, he's not going to be the nominee. That I'm sure all of us and all political commentators can agree on. If that's the case, I think that he has a real future of being an influencer, and sort of offering a new alternative to the new version of republicanism that has kind of been labeled as Trump world or MAGA. I think that Vivek has been pretty efficient in giving that kind of a youthful twist and taking that brand and separating it from the person Donald Trump and making it kind of more of an ideology, America First ideology. Frankly, I think that it would be not beneficial for him to be Trump's vice president. I think that would be an efficient way for Trump to kind of keep him under his watch. And I think that Donald Trump would not be a great person to be the number 2 guy in his administration. But either way, what a showing from Vivek. And I think that if he can avoid the Andrew Yang trap, has a strong.
Great point.
Yeah, I agree with Zach on that side. I actually don't think Vivek is going to be the VP candidate. I think Trump, my political winner, was going to be Donald Trump. I think he's going to clean up the primary. I think he's going to go up against Joe Biden, who has kind of, maybe it's his own mistake, maybe not, whatever you say. Like, I think a lot of the voters are kind of frustrated. I think the world's not in a better place geopolitically. I think the economy didn't do that great. And I think you can kind of point to him overflowing the economy with money right when he became president with his stimulus package. So I think with that being said, I think Donald Trump will win. And that would clearly make him the comeback winner. And even if he gets indicted and can't run, he still would win, because I think he would infuriate a ton of American people, and that would vindicate him in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to say Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump doesn't have a lot of the disadvantages he had in 2020, mainly his own Twitter account. He's on Truth Social forever. And so people can't, no one has a Truth Social account who's not diehard conservative. So no one's can see what he's tweeting at all hours in the day. So I think Ron DeSantis, I don't think he's going to go with Nikki Haley. I think I think it was you, Micah, who said that. I think Ron DeSantis is probably going to lose Iowa, and then he's going to drop out of the race and then support Trump, and then probably get a cabinet position after he finishes as governor. I think that would probably be the safe bet. I think Trump's probably going to choose a more moderate VP to endear the American people. So those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Losers.
Yeah, I guess regardless, it's definitely gonna be interesting. My political loser is Ron DeSantis. I mean, I remember when I was first introduced to him, and I was kind of like, he's a little corny. He doesn't really fit my bill for someone who I'd want. But as you know, you see some of the stuff he's done in Florida and stuff like that. If you'd asked me this question a year ago or a year and a half ago, I would have definitely said, as the winner for the election, I would have said Ron DeSantis. He was sort of a new cape from, what you guys had alluded to, sort of MAGA, sort of this extreme, I guess, sect of, political ideologies. But now he's just, it's consolidated really fast and not in his favor. So I would say Ron DeSantis is my political loser. Yeah.
My political loser is Xi Jinping.
Oh.
And before the Communist Party comes after me, but No, I honestly think this is going to be a big year of their last like 20 years catching up to them, of just young people being very unhappy with their situation over there, the population aging, lack of freedom. I think all of those things are going to be more kind of highlighted in this year as it already has been. I mean, I'm not sure what what media we are shown is really truthfully going on,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, so take this with a grain of salt, but I really do think with the media I've seen that China's gonna have a tough year.
I think even irregardless of the media, if you just look at trends from a philosophical standpoint, they have a huge population crisis. That's a fact.
Hmm.
They're having an economic crisis that maybe you can see through a different lens depending um, on what's going on. And I I mean, frankly, the trade-off between the Chinese government and the people has been you give us your freedom and we will give you prosperity. And
Mm.
prosperity is starting to dry up. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a very apt selection, Gavin. And let's see how it plays out. I wish and pray for
Verbatim,
the freedom of the
verbatim,
Chinese people.
verbatim. What you just said also applies internally in the United States. Um,
Yes.
I mean, that's I always keep this book next to me, but just Ray Dalio's Changing World Order. It speaks a lot about that. But yeah, I mean, when you speak economically, I think Evergreen, they're like having like a little mini, well, not mini, it's going to be a huge, like sort of 2008. I think like Evergreen's like their major real estate agent and they're like going under or something like that or on the cusp of. So yeah, I could definitely see that angle where it's a bad year for China for sure.
Yeah. What, Michael, what do you think about that book? Like how Ray Dalio thinks China will be the superpower of the world and all like
Yeah.
United
So and
States is gonna
yeah,
collapse.
no, yeah, no, I initially I was like, dude, he's everything he's fucking saying is right. But then I had to step back. I was like,
That
because he
sucks.
sort yeah, he sort of has like a little bit of a Chinese bias a little bit into it. And you spoke all the points that they're having internally. So for the idea for them to become the hegemonic power or the new reserve currency from this like very consolated insular place doesn't really I don't really see that. The point that I love about the book, I guess I don't know if I love this, but the stuff that he speaks about internally, how you have this huge separation in values and beliefs of people and how that creates sort of a lot of what we see. So you see the growth and the spurt of like such things such as woke or like the opposite. You have these very extreme sects of people who have ideas and it's creating like this just conflict that you have with people, and that's the point in the book that I really like sort of our decrease in productivity, our decrease in education. What does this meant in the past, and then how does it relate to now and going forward in the future? And that's the part about the book that I find the most like noteworthy, or I'm paying attention to the most.
Hmm. And there's this book, Zach, I think you showed it to me, called Red Roulette, and it talked about how this couple basically built a super big company in China from like 92 or 93 to like 2005, and how they could expand that because the government basically allowed them to. And then China became like they took away everybody's freedom and they're much less capitalistic. And once that happened, the wife of the guy who started the company just got taken away. And then that kind of ideology of, oh, your money is mine, what you've grown is mine, has come back and stayed since then. And if they were to open it back up to being more capitalistic, then I'd be a little worried. But it seems that their values are just too closely held to their chest to even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, China's an area of intense interest to me, and um, I love China. I love the Chinese people, so I'm keen to see how it develops. So my political loser for 2024 is warmongers and neocons of the Nikki Haley vein. I think that these people have had substantial and very public losses recently. And it's not even, it used to be the case where you had to go back decades to point out these losses. This is within the last couple of years. Afghanistan and the utter disheartening pullout that we saw there of people grabbing onto the Air Force planes leaving, trying desperately to save their lives and to save their children. I couldn't even imagine what I would be feeling if I lost a family member that was in the service in Afghanistan after seeing how that played out. And then, frankly, the Ukraine war, which we saw a huge push for support in, and the appetite of the American people to continue supporting this war. Certainly, I don't think that there's any major political leader that's calling for boots on the ground at this point. But even economically, the appetite for support is drying up quite quickly. I think even the Biden administration is changing their official stance now to kind of trying to quietly push it aside. This is the neocon vein is and there's just the propensity towards war is common on both sides of the political spectrum. I think that our generation and through the access to information that we have is not going to buy what these people are selling. And this is also one that I personally get behind and believe in. I think that a world where the default is not war will be a better world for us and our future children to live in.
That's great. I so what you were talking about, neocon, that kind of ideology, that's actually uh kind of fits with my philosophy section for my best pick, which was going to be isolationism. So just how I can, like, if I could bridge the gap between those two. For me, I kind of saw, I think Tucker Carlson had a really, like, he really hit the nail on the head. I think it was a few months ago where you'd interview every GOP candidate and he would say, like, why do you support Ukraine when you don't support, like, funding the border? And all the different politicians who are kind of that vein would say, well, we can fund Ukraine and we can take care of the border. And maybe that idea is true, but I think people don't believe that now. And so I think that philosophy is becoming ever more clear, that especially what's happening with the border and whatnot, that isolationism and taking care of a lot of the issues that are at home have to be dealt with first before you can look beyond your own border and fund $50 billion aid packages to Ukraine and then 10 billion to Israel. And then you also have to think about what's happening in Taiwan. And it's not to say that any of these conflicts, it's good that the US is doing it or not. I think it's just a lot for the American people to keep thinking about, wait, so there's 50 billion here, there's 10 billion there, there's another 10 billion going to 3 different parts of the world. I think it's a lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. My only, I guess my pushback, like that's what I would want, right? The only pushback is like it's like for us to tread away from warmongering or something like that, that there has to be a change in the authority that administers those things. So I don't you mentioned that it's a bipartisan, Zach. You mentioned that it's sort of a bipartisan act, and that it is. And what you essentially are, what we would want is that you peel back and you take those people away that have those decisions to send us into war. But until you change that, I don't know how you actually go about that. Like the public support, it's we, it's different from when we went into Iraq, right? Like the news, we didn't have our phones, we didn't have news 24, 7, right? So the Dick Cheneys of the world could flourish, but the Lindsey Grahams and the Haleys of the world, they're here. But how do we
I hear
stop
you.
it? There's no public support that can actually be like, oh, we're not going to go send this $10 billion check.
And to your point, even if there is the public support, if there's no outlet for it, then what good does it do?
Right.
I would argue that there's now 3 outlets. The traditional outlet has been kind of like the hippy dippy peace aspect of the Democratic Party and people that just cling to peace. Now we're seeing the rising stardom of 2 alternatives. One is Felipe's point, which is the isolationism and or like America first, that's sometimes labeled as nationalism, that is associated with the alternative right that's now developing, the Donald Trump and the Viveks of the world. That's now an outlet. And then the third outlet is the huge question mark that is now the third party candidates. It's the RFK juniors of the world. So now there's people on the ballot that you can that can be a channel for that desire to get rid of this ideology.
I actually totally agree. I guess I would sum it up in 3 ways. So we have the independence that's growing, right? We have sort of to Felipe to sort of combine them, this deep globalization, right? So you have to focus more on, I guess at one point it was NAFTA, but the Canadian, Mexico, Latin America, sort of that bubble of things, right? And I guess not really consolidate, but as we shift more towards deglobalization and having that maybe nationalistic pride and stuff like that, that stuff's going to increase. And as an offshoot, we probably won't be in as many wars or something like that. That's that I could put a long future on that for sure.
Yeah, and to add to that, I just think what you're asking, like, what leader is going to do that? I think Donald Trump, in many ways, that vote, the people who will vote for him in 2024, I think are going to be voting for essentially an isolationist kind of stance of, we don't want like wars. I mean, like Trump is just saying, I'm going to end the Ukraine war like the day I become president, which is like, so I think he's trying to get us out of like the neocon perspective. Like, I think that's going to be his running platform. And it's always been focused on the border. I mean, it kind of just makes sense, I think.
No, it does. It's just the way the point that gets people really flustered with Trump is that when you build a slogan like build the wall and stuff like that, that's where you screw people the wrong way. But to your point, we didn't enter any wars under Trump. Like that's just the truth. That he's the only president in the 21st century that can say that, right? And that's just the truth of the matter. Objectively looking at it. So I agree with you in tenfolds on that.
Yeah, it's not that it's a like he's gonna win all of those voters, because this is something that maybe like 60% of the people agree with, and like he'll definitely put a lot of people off with what he says. But like I think he'll win the majority just because he'll have the right like position on those things. Yeah.
Felipe,
You
can
like
I
that?
ask, what's your perspective on the trade issues around isolationism?
I mean, it definitely like is a tax on American consumers, isolationism. Like, absolutely. If it costs cheaper to build a factory in China and to ship that stuff over to the US than build it in the US, the consumer is paying a higher price. So, but also, I think like we went way too extreme where we were like shipping off all the most critical components of our infrastructure, like semiconductors are in Taiwan. So it kind of forces us to now have to protect Taiwan, or our economy just won't function in the way we want it to. So I don't know. I definitely think there's maybe some type of balance, but it's for sure over the long term. I think both Republicans like Trump and Biden were both isolationist in economic policy. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in Malay in South America was very free market of you should just ship if it's too expensive to build in Argentina, just ship it from somewhere else. So that's like the one place that I know of that is becoming more free market. So yeah.
Yeah. And Zach, what was your best philosophy?
Mine was much more individualistic. I said intentionality in consuming things. And my big three there were food, to your point with the winning company. I've become in my own life, and I see the people around me becoming much more intentional about the food that they're consuming. And I see that only increasing and accelerating in this next year. Alcohol. I know that all of us have had conversations offline about the consumption of alcohol, and now I'm seeing that trend again. And maybe a lot of this is also like self-selection bias or the people that I surround myself with. But even I've gotten in the last week 2 texts from friends who I wouldn't expect it from saying like, "Hey, I'm not drinking for this amount of time." So I see this continuing to accelerate. And then the third is phone usage, which ties in with my shorting of Meta. I think that people, and myself included, are becoming more keenly aware of the effect that the time that they spend on their phone does to their mental and physical health, and will take that into their own hands in a growing proportion this year.
Yeah, I can get behind those. Mine was digital humanism. So basically
Whoa.
putting putting people over technology. And I do think the election is going to be a big event to push that forward. And I think that it's going to take a big event to do that. But honestly, I think that there's going to be a bunch of AI tools coming out, and a bunch of these will be good, but some will be bad. And the bad will push it into the limelight and require kind of putting technology backward a little bit and putting humans before it.
Hmm. Do you think that that's possible?
I want to say yes, and I do think so. I mean, I think that that podcast we listened to the other day about kind of like a regulatory body behind AI is possible and will gain traction because of bad events that happen, and they will be more important. But Micah, what was yours?
Philosophical?
Yeah.
Well, I just listened to Naval. Naval changed my life in 2023. Hopefully, he continues to do that in 2024. But as it applies to society, I don't know. Good question. I guess individualism is one thing that I would be keen on. Give people their agency back. You're starting to see it. You're starting to see like whether not to get too. I don't want to get canceled, but like you're sort of seeing this consolidation of like DEI and efforts or informative action. But I get to talk with a lot of my friends and a lot of my friends of color, and we sort of want our agency back, right? We want to be graded on our merit, not on how we look. So that's my big philosophical thing that I think just takes a total 180. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court also, I mean, breaking down affirmative action is kind of opening a path for that. And my loser, actually, for ideology, I know it's like cliche with everything that's happened, is though DEI. I don't think that it's going to die out all of a sudden in 2024, but I think the proponents for it and how these companies talk about DEI is definitely going to be suppressed. I think they're starting to see, whether it's Disney or whether it's Harvard, that there are repercussions for just openly saying and talking about it and defending it. And so people are going to be a lot more quiet about it. But I still think it's going to be there. I mean, they hired massive amounts of employees and have trained HR in a certain way that reinforces DEI. So I don't think that it's going to go away overnight.
The taking away of ideologies in a corporate setting is going to be taken away, and they're not going to be quiet about it. They're going to be loud about it. You're seeing Bill Ackman. You're seeing the besties. You're seeing this change in a corporation effort, and so I agree. Just a little separately.
Hmm.
Do you think though? You think it's going to be kicked out completely out of the?
Not in 1 year, but to your point, it's not going to be overnight. But yeah, no, because it just the foundations of it are very poor. Just on from a just like a first principle basis. So I think that's the part that just quickly changes. You're already seeing fragments of it, especially in the corporate world, and that's all that it really pertains to for the most part. But the idea of putting an ideology into a corporation under the umbrella of DE&I is not a strong foundation. Full stop.
Yeah,
Wrong.
I mean, look at all the cuts that have already happened in like the Magnificent Seven. It's kind
Yeah.
of showing that theme. But Zach, what was yours for worse?
Loser. Mine was consumerism. Credit card debt is the highest level it's ever been, $1 trillion. 56 million Americans have been in credit card debt for over 1 year. Consumer spending has been trending upwards. Even if you think that people want to continue spending, their capacity to do so is just getting thinner and thinner. I think that this is the year where it turns. That's kind of the negative position. On the positive position, I think that people are becoming more intentional with what they're spending their money on, and that this kind of mindless numbness of consumerism is reaching its the pendulum is swinging the other way on this. But even if you take the bleakest outlook, I think just the ability for people to keep on pursuing that consumeristic lifestyle is coming to an end.
I completely agree, and that kind of goes along with my worst company of like ads getting shoved down your face and you just buy it because it's the coolest ad. That's gonna stop. It's gonna be intentional buying and like what your values align with. My worst was extreme polarization, and I feel like more and more people are just becoming more aware of all of the polarizing news and media. And I think Micah, your company was a good point of that shifting, and hopefully that does take off. But Micah, what was your worst philosophy?
Victim mentality, dude. I know we can probably all agree to that. I mean, that is you can't blame anyone for anything. I believe people that go through real pain and who have real circumstances that hurt them that are actual victims, right? The if you can wake up every day, you're not a victim, right? That's mine. That dies out. That's the biggest loser. That dies out in 2024, and God willing. Um, yeah, short and sweet, victim mentality.
Amen to that. I really hope that's true. But yeah, so that's our predictions for the year. I enjoyed this.
Let's see if we're right. We might all
Oh,
be
oh,
radically wrong.
I think I didn't do my political leader worst. So I just
Who?
got to put it out there just so that we know next year if I'm
Yeah.
ever, I think there's going to be a rightward wave that goes against the pink wave of 2021 in South America and Latin America. I think
What's
Chile,
the pink wave?
Yeah,
that was
what
a
is that?
far left movement in 2021. So you had Argentina had elected Fernandez, Brazil, Lula da Silva. Chile had elected its first kind of like socialist president. I think when you're looking at Central America, for better or for worse, for how they cleaned up the streets, and they were able to do it with a kind of more rightward, pro-capitalist, heavy on crime or crackdown on crime governments. And so I think you're going to see a lot of similar things in South America. I think Argentina is kind of the bellwether in that, and so very curious to see what happens. In Chile, the people voted against the constitutional reform that they tried to do 2 years ago, and so I don't think those governments have had the best couple 4 years. Just economically, the world economy's not been great, and so I think there's going to be a turn of events in that area. And in Colombia, they also voted a more left-leaning president as well. So
Interesting. Well,
I,
we'll find
I get,
out.
I get my hair cut by this 85-year-old Paraguayan guy, and he was saying that they just elected a Malay-esque president, and he was very excited to tell me that.
yeah,
So,
and Ecuador elected a more free market president who, like, the gangs just like attacked one of the TV stations and like made a message like "Don't mess with us," whatever, like broadcasted it on TV. So I mean, it's definitely gonna pick up out there. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's gonna be a rightward shift in South America. So
We'll find out. But that brings our episode 12 to an end, and wishing our listeners the best 2024.
Yes, sir. Godspeed.